we can get started with intros and everything else. So everybody who's here, this is Waypoint Web3. This was a space that I wanted to create to kind of have kind of a nice, safe environment for everybody to talk about everything related to Web3 gaming. This is co-produced by Sanctor Capital United Gamers, so thank you both for that. I myself am one of the co-founders and partners at Sanctor Capital. So here I have to kind of give you a bunch of disclosures. This is all not financial legal advice. Everything I say is my personal opinion. You may hear of companies and or assets that we either had positions in, have positions in, or may be interested in having positions in the future. In the interest of kind of full disclosure, we do have a position in YGG, United Gamers, and Ancient 8, who should be, Howard, who should be joining a little bit later. And this space is recorded, as are all the other spaces. So you can go back and re-listen to any number of the previous conversations. And after this one is complete, we'll have a posting of the conversation as well. And I think that should cover it. And yes, I've mentioned before, I have a pet hooligan. That is my personal investment. So for those of you who joined in the middle of that conversation. So without kind of much further ado, I do want to introduce the speakers we have today. We will be talking about the evolution of guilds. It's something that has been at the forefront of Web3 gaming. Guilds have kind of catalyzed and done a lot for the growth of Web3 gaming, and so let's see where they go next. So to talk about that, we have some awesome speakers, and first, I want to introduce Jeff. So as I introduce you, please just kind of say your name and a little bit about yourself and how you got into Web3 and what you do at your current company.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Yes. So for those that don't know me, my name is Jeff Holmberg. I lead asset acquisition here at Yield Guild Games, or YGG, as we know. I actually got into the space, as I was mentioning before. I'll repeat it. Late 2017, early 2018. Actually got my start as one of the first hires at OpenSea, where I was leading partnerships for just about a year. So the really awesome thing about that is I was right on the front lines of seeing the very early OG collectibles, very, very OG games. There's even a lot of what is now play to earn games like such as Dissolution, Gods Unchained, that were originally born all the way back in 2018. So obviously I carried my career through the blockchain space. I have a very, very close relationship with Gabby Dazan, who is one of the co-founders of YGG, and eventually made my way to finally team up with him and work on a project. And that's where I am today, and extremely happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Okay, Sai, could you introduce yourself next?
Yeah, sure. First of all, nice to meet you. Nice to be here with you again, Ilya, Jeff, and Abby. Yeah, so I'm Kaysaya, founder of One Snap Esports. What I do here, what I currently do right now, actually lots of things in esports and Web3 gaming scene. So in esports scene, I sometimes do on the side, I do provide commentaries to some esports game in Seattle. In fact, I used to commentate in the 30th Southeast Asian Game last 2019, where I shoutcasted few esports titles like Arena of Valor and Mobile Legends Bang Bang. And that was the very first time where video games got included into a multi-sport event that never have included video games before. So it's kind of like I was very proud of that moment that I was one of the shoutcasters in there. Recently, I also started doing some commentaries for some Web3 game titles like Titan Arena and Heroes TD. But since late 2019, or I think early 2020, that's when I founded an esports team from Web2, which in fact I have upgraded now into a Web3 esports team as well, which is One Snap Esports. Other things that I do in Web3 include some consultations, some Web3 game projects. I think that's where I'm able to utilize my game development background as a programmer and producer before. I used to work with Dean Love, and not to mention, I used to work with Gabby Reason as well in Anino Games, OG times with us. And Yeah. What got me into Web3 gaming is actually, I'd say, Theater Arena. I knew Axie Infinity long before then, but then I didn't really play it. But yeah, I'd say what got me into Web3 gaming is Theater Arena.
Awesome, thank you, Howard. Thank was able to join. Awesome. Could you kind of introduce yourself and just talk a little bit about kind of what you do at Ancient Eight and how you got into Web3?
Yeah, for sure. Sorry for being late. How are you guys? So I'm co-founder at Ancient 8. We are a Web3 gaming guild and Web3 gaming infrastructure uh, organization, decentralized autonomous organization. And well, we started as the largest gaming guild in Vietnam with about 3,500 scholars, and we've been building software and building different tools for the infrastructure layer for GameFi, including the community, the first ever GameFi focused institutional grade research center, and you can find that on our website for Web3 gaming research. And we partner with about 30 top Web3 games, and we compete aggressively in different Web3 gaming esports tournaments. And the whole premise is we're trying to onboard as many people as possible to blockchain and Web3 through Web3 gaming, because that's one of the most intuitive way. So great to meet you, everyone.
Awesome, thank you. And last but not least, Abhinand, and please tell me if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly.
No, you're not, Ilya. Hey guys, I'm Abhinandan. I run Good Game Nation, or GG Nation for short. We are a competitive gaming platform for high schools and college students in both Web 2 and Web 3 games. Currently, we are based in India, where we have over 120 campuses where we have gaming clubs. They compete in three game titles right now: Valorant, FIFA, and PUBG. And in under 3 months, we are launching with around 4 to 5 different Web3 games. I think my entry to Web3 gaming was I used to play a lot of Call of Duty, FIFA, and wanted to enter the esports scene when I exited my last business, which was in motorsports, where my company got acquired for about $70 million. We had the exclusive commercial rights to four-wheel motorsports in India, and that got bought out. And my natural sort of inclination was to sort of do something in esports, given I've been tracking this industry for a while, and just given my background in sports, wanted to sort of replicate some of that in this. And grassroots was an important aspect of what I wanted to sort of go after. Provide that opportunity to aspiring gamers and kind of structure that distribution and organize the grassroots esports. Got into Web3 games through just investing in a bunch of P2E games early on, and realized that there's this great opportunity to sort of even include Web3 games into this overall proposition that we are building with. And yeah, that's been the journey. Ilya, thank you for having me, and good to meet everyone else.
Awesome, awesome. So I want to have this discussion kind of in a free flow format. So when I kind of throw out a topic or question, if you have something to say, just go out and kind of chime in. At the end, with about 15 minutes to the hour, I'm going to open it up for the audience. So if you do have questions, please don't hesitate and ask them when the time comes. And I want to start with kind of establishing the foundation for what a Web3 guild is. I find that when you say guild and a person is coming from a Web2 space, the guilds where it comes to traditional gaming mean one thing, they mean a slightly different thing in Web3. So for all the speakers, I'd like to kind of go around and say what is a guild nowadays in Web3, and what is its place in the gaming ecosystem?
Oh yeah. I guess I'll just start it off. You asked about the role of guilds in Web3 gaming, right? I still think it's mainly onboarding because right now we still see that we have that untapped market, especially coming from those who are not familiar with what Web3 gaming is. I want to like give you shout outs to my pro players here coming from League of Legends Wild Rift. Disaster is actually there. I'm not sure about who else are actually here, but he's so familiar with me right now. And I gotta admit, some of them they're not familiar with what Web3 gaming is as of the moment because they're coming from the professional scene in Web2 gaming. So the goal of at least for One Snap Esports, our goal is to onboard them into that, and not only them, but also those who are coming from not maybe not really gamers but having that interest into getting into Web3 gaming. So I'd still say that even up to this point, the guilds have this role on giving that knowledge and sharing that knowledge and how or educating these players who wants to get into Web3 games. But specifically for One Snap Esports, not only that we do onboarding, but at the same time, our goal is to find specific competitive Web3 games that are competitive enough for aspiring esports players. And we have to make sure that these games are actually enjoyable and fun to play and not just, it's kind of a work kind of thing because we came from Web2 esports and we want to keep that aspect of fun and competitive with our title and what we do coming from Web 2.
Jeff, go ahead. I think you're raising
Yeah,
your hand.
no. That's an excellent answer because I definitely want to back her up. Like, I think bringing in user base is an excellent starting point for Guild, but I know because I had touched upon education, right? I think that is such a huge factor and responsibility for guilds these days is to teach players about good quality Web3 games in existence, teaching them about wallet usage, rental mechanisms, and even on the YGG side, we've seen a lot of videos about financial management, right? Seeing our players really start to understand these economies and not just earning, X amount of gaming tokens from playing and then cashing out 100% of them is being able to learn budgeting, right? Learn budgeting inside these games to upgrade their characters or skins, weapons, etc., land, whatever it might be for a particular game. And then realizing that they might have like a higher earning ratio by doing that and being able to save for themselves, right? I think all guilds can agree that there is some type of percentage cut that does come back to the guild. Of course, there's people that need to be paid, for instance, like game ambassadors, for instance, here. But being able to learn financial management, money management, education overall of wallet usage, understanding more generalized macro crypto elements is a really important facet. And I think on top of that, of bringing more players into these ecosystems for these games as Guild, is also how you want to view the income that arises from the token or the splits from the scholars, right? There are unfortunately a lot of guilds out there that are very aggressively ROI based that might want to cash out all their earnings. But at least on a YGG side, like we think about some of these earnings as like a user acquisition cost, right? As we've seen for our mega growth in Axie, as we were getting, SLP, we were even dipping into the market to go buy some AXS in the past, right? In order to be able to breed, a higher amount of Axies just to meet the demand. So, we think it's a responsibility of guilds to really have that long-term macro vision, really bring users, high quality users into these games, and then just keep them within that financial management and education realm so they can grow and not remain a scholar forever. I think that's the utmost important and end goal for guilds is to get them introduced, get them playing, help build foundations for these games, and then, have the players go off on their own because now they're ready and trained. I think that's a very exciting thing to see as well.
That's awesome. I want to go off of that as well. I think education is a is a huge piece for what Guild does. The way I look at in Web3 gaming or just in gaming in general, right? There are gamers who love games, love to discover new games. There are games that creates a great experience and great product for people to both enjoy and get value from both the emotional standpoint and also from a monetary standpoint. That's the beauty of Web3 gaming. Guild is sort of sitting in the middle between the games and gamers to serve as the distribution channel for the different games. For gamers to discover, higher quality games that, one, maybe they can have more fun playing. They don't know about this game before, but through Guild's educational material, they learn about this game and realize, hey, this game is so much more fun. And they realize, or discover games that are, have higher earning potential. Because, we think, gaming after all needs to be fun. And Web3 gaming is the same. It needs to be fun. And, in our research center on our website, we have about 30 articles about different games, the macro of different games. We hand select the most exciting games in the market, and do a research on both from an investment perspective on ROI, and whether you should invest your time in playing these games for financial reasons, and also on how fun that gameplay is, and educating people about, hey, there are probably 1,000 games being developed right now in the market in crypto gaming, but which ones are the higher quality ones that you should pay more attention to. And we curate that information in our research center for people to discover. And we sort of see our role to be that it's not only managing scholars and helping people to have a better earning, which we do for the 3,500 scholars we have, but more importantly, introduce people to higher quality Web3 games and introducing people to blockchain as a new technology and helping them to understand and navigate this entire space. That's sort of the core focus for us.
So, a number of times we heard the term, games need to be fun. And then Howard, I love the fact that you mentioned the term curation. So are guilds now effectively becoming kind of curators, right? Is there kind of do you feel that responsibility that, the games that you amplify, they're the games that then represent the Web3 space to the rest of the gamer ecosystem?
Yeah, sorry about that, Howard. Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, I think so. We are the experts in Web3 gaming. We have a team of 5 people that review or do research on games full time, and they spend all their time doing researches in different games. And we talked to hundreds of games in the last few months, right? We've spent a lot more time than the typical player or retail investor can do in researching the different games and looking into different high quality games. And we developed a system to do research and evaluate the quality of these games. We also have an esports team, another 4 people in doing game training and also gameplay reviews as well. So this is an expert team that's been very deep in Web3 gaming and gaming in general, and they do provide that curation of content of being able to screen out and filter out what are the higher quality ones that people should spend more time on. So we curate that for our community. And I think the way I look at it is, Web2 games, you looked for strong distributors to know, hey, which games are high quality. Like you look at the games that EA produces that are, ranked highly on Steam. These are the games you would be more likely to try out because more people think, or the experts think, they are the high quality ones. And I think for Web3 gaming, we kind of serve that role to provide value for players to provide that distribution and screening for them.
Okay, Sai, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, pretty much the same thing as Howard, right? So, but I think for OneSnap Esports, not just curation, aggressively looking for these game titles, but at the same time, we're focused on which games have the potential for esports, or those game developers that are really aiming to build a competitive aspect for esports. Because some might design their games as if okay, this is competitive and all that, but they're not planning to create some community activities in there. So our focus, we're not trying to rush everything. Just like in Web2 or mainstream gaming, we try to see if the developers or the publishers themselves will create some sort of activities or tournaments, grassroots tournaments for their communities, and that's where we want to support you. That's why in One Stop Esports, like regardless if we're gonna be early on a project or not, like Athena Arena, we're not super early, but we entered it either way, and we're participating in lots of different tournaments in there. And I think that's where mainly the players are also empowered, wherein they do teamwork, coaching sessions, and all that. So it's just kind of different, but then again, we're not trying to rush things out, but instead we want to make sure that the goal of the developers is also in line with the goal of One Snap Esports, which is to actually go for that esports aspect.
Awesome. That transitions nicely into something I wanted to talk about, which is esports and how do kind of guilds kind of coincide with that whole concept. We're now starting to see a number of Web2 esports teams trying to kind of breach the Web3 paradigm through the guild model. We see kind of a number of guilds trying to kind of explore the esports concept. We see first tournaments starting to get set up. Where do you see guilds with respect to esports?
I can jump on
think
that. Go.
All right, Jeff, go ahead.
Oh, no, Bill, please go ahead. No, I spoke a lot in the last question. Go ahead. You go first.
Yeah, I think at the very heart of gaming sits esports, right? I think inherently every gamer is competitive in nature. You don't play a video game to lose, and I think guilds, just like esports organizations in the traditional Web2 gaming world, will play a huge role in Web3 gaming exploring as well. I think besides just income generation, competition is probably one of the most easiest way to engage and scale Web3 gaming. So I think from a user perspective and from a larger Web3 game perspective, esports is super important. One of the things that we are also seeing with esports overall in India is a lot of people coming into it, aspiring gamers coming into it, wanting more competition, wanting a platform to compete and exhibit their skills. Obviously, this happens in the Web2 world in a very natural manner, but with Web3 games, there is no singular platform where you can go in and compete with others. And hence, that's one of the things that we're building at GG Nation. And creating also the micro guilds at every campus level where they can onboard players and sort of consolidate them and compete across multiple games. Why we think that is important is also to sort of go back to what we were discussing in the previous discussion, the previous point of view, which is just cross pollination of games, right? Because guilds, I think, by nature need to sort of start becoming anchors for Web3 games. They become the playground to test new games, test new patches, updates, take feedback from users, and create that sense of community early on. And when we need to sort of engage them at scale, you need something more than just asking them to just grind it out. And esports is one of the best ways to do it. And I think you see the transition happening very soon with even like traditional esports teams coming into Web3, just like Kasaya said, and also guilds becoming competitive amongst each other, building rivalries, building fandom and legacy for themselves.
Yeah, I definitely want to back Abhinan up on this. Like one point that he said, right? You're seeing like almost sub guilds being created. I'm not sure if that was the exact terminology you used on that, but when I think about it, like inside the YGG ecosystem, like we have YGG League of Kingdoms, YGG LOK. And I think as certain players start to flourish inside these games, become very good at it, become spending majority of their time inside of these games, almost like these little mini sub DAOs can be created, or the Web3 version of an esports team, which I think is very exciting. So it's, when we think about like the guild perspective and even like these sub guilds, that phrase, or sub DAOs is the word that we use, is starting to give birth to these mini esports teams. And we're trying to accelerate that specifically, starting now and going forward to really push this, because, guilds are really, almost like the job board or the birthing place for the Web3 esports teams, which I think is very exciting. So yeah, I just wanted to touch upon on that, because I get super excited about that, because I think, even touching upon like Guild's responsibility in this as well, like even in the first question, the UGC content streaming, I think this is just going to be absolutely massive going forward. And I think it's almost going to be a strategy shift that a lot of guilds are going to be moving to in the near future.
I want to talk about kind of a more kind of complicated, controversial subject. It's hard to argue that play to earn gaming was the first part of it was very good for guilds and helped kind of them kind of establish themselves within the Web3 space. But the first kind of iteration of play to earn games have faced kind of a number of challenges. We saw what happened to Axie Infinity. We saw what happened to a number of other games. And so I want to ask, first of all, did you see this coming? And how do you see both games and guilds adjusting to the challenges that have been kind of unearthed with kind of the first iteration of the play to earn model?
I think there's a quick answer from my end. I think for One Step Esports, luckily enough, I think for us, I wouldn't say this applies much for us because we were different in our approach wherein we focus on identifying the fun quality games, etc. Regardless if we're early on the project or not, it's always been, I know, like for most good, it's always been best to be at the early stages of the project, right? Because P2E models games design it that way. Wherein, okay, you entered a project early, then you have an upper advantage. So I guess just what I can do, maybe as an individual and a founder of one of the esports team or guild right now in the Web2, Web3 space, as an advisor and consultant for some Web3 game projects, I just highlight the importance of the fun and quality of the game output that they must produce rather than giving that upper advantage always to those first comers. So, but yeah, I'm aware about how other guilds have been affected on this one. Because I did advise for some guilds as well, and now they're trying to um lessen the numbers of their hires and employees and all that because they've been affected. But it's kind of sad, but I think it should also start because the guilds have really good purpose in building their guilds to support communities, to support these games. It's just so kind of sad wherein many of the games that have started in a P2E model have actually, kind of dying. And I don't know if like they're doing something about it, which is I think they should. We can see lots of projects doing that. They're still being very transparent, but I hope it will produce really some good output too, especially for the guilds who have invested a lot in this project.
I definitely want to add to that too, because I think, when you think about the more traditional play to earn model is you purchase X assets, you have Y amount of scholars and, and it equals Z amount of ROI just through gameplay and earnings. And as we see, like, especially in the bear market and current conditions, right, the amount that players are earning or are guilds that are keeping from the player rentals is not really enough to sustain, full-time careers or full-time jobs as it was in the past, right? So it hasn't been so attractive to those people looking to really substitute or even complement what they're doing in a lot of these low-income areas around the world specifically. So I think, just touching upon like the esports, the UGC, the content yet again, like I think there's going to be different ways that guilds can set up revenue models as well as games can set up revenue models in the UGC and content creation field for that, right? I mean, when you think about the job or the traditional, OG P2E type games of just the scholars relying on that income through gameplay, I think there's going to be other opportunities and a nice shift to these opportunities that can be presented both by the guild and both by the game developers or studios for these players. Now, not only is that going to be, extra beneficial for the Web3 players, but I also think this will be even more attractive to the Web2 players because they're already used to that environment, right? When we think about some of the top titles in the space, my two go-tos are I always pick on Fortnite and Apex Legends, and you think about, the esports content, the streaming, the videos, YouTube, Twitch. It's kind of like if you want to be a semi-professional or a professional, you really need to have really clean content and really very well curated content in order. And Apex and Fortnite love this, right? Because they are getting essentially free marketing and promo because this esports team or this streamer is trying to build up their own career using that content as the main source of their entertainment. Keyword entertainment, I think we've touched upon here. So I think figuring out other facets of earnings and revenue streams, both from the guild and the game side, is really my TLDR here, and where that shift I think is going to come about.
Yeah, I want to touch up on that too. I think from the beginning we've always seen. I think people have to step back a little bit and realize that the play to earn and play and earn the earning part is largely a customer acquisition cost. If you really think about it, for the entire industry, for whether it's for GameFi or just for blockchain in general. That's one of the most effective way for the industry to acquire new users, and it's an investment that whether it's the game or just as an industry we put in to acquire new users. I think I think a lot of the pioneers in the space have sort of seen it coming and plan according to that as well, in terms of, hey, it's amazing phenomenon and tool for people to both generate pretty significant income for a period of time, and also earn and also like acquire a lot of users for the crypto industry as a whole. And I think the whole premise for crypto right now, or the biggest, I would say, if there is a North Star for the entire crypto blockchain space, it is the number of users that we have on chain, and blockchain gaming is doing a big contribution there. So I would think it's unfair to say that guilds are sort of okay, esports is not affected, but guilds are suffering from this. I don't think there's for people who actually see or pay attention to the space closely, this is something that some people have at least planned for, or are ready for, and in turn prepare for sort of a longer term game. In terms of people are making plans for the next 3 years or next 5 years of what the entire crypto gaming space is going to become, instead of focusing on, hey, right now, we have the entire crypto space, crypto price dropped, so like short-term earnings is going to be lower, so let's focus on something else. It's not the case. It's more so that we're all trying to build valuable product for the entire GameFi space and for the entire blockchain space to acquire more users. That's the bigger purpose, and I think it will be more interesting if we are focused on the bigger picture.
I see that Abhinandan has been patiently having his hand raised, so I want to give him a chance to speak as well.
I love how Jeff, when he started talking, he said the traditional P2E gaming, and then Howard was talking about pioneers, and we're still so early in this industry. It's less than 4-5 years old. My I don't know, simple addition to what all of them have spoken is, I think early on with P2E games, what really happened was the education came much later through guilds. And that became a kind of friction point, given that a lot of folks who got into it without understanding what they were getting into. And I think guilds in a lot of ways today and going forward, and that's a large part of our existence as well, need to sort of become the first point of adoption, not just to the gaming space, but also crypto as a whole. And I think that's the biggest challenge that P2E models had early on, which affected guilds, both in a positive and a negative manner. I think going forward, given the number of guilds that are there and the number of guilds that are getting created now, education of P2E will become a very, very important aspect.
I want to kind of follow up on all of this with kind of going to what Howard said about the long game. I'm curious what that means to everyone here, because on one hand, where it comes to adoption, we're starting to hear transitions from play to earn to play to own to play and earn. There's a whole kind of family of monikers around that. And then on the other side, we see, teams around kind of, like Yuga, right, working around like, actual concurrency possibilities with things like, the other side, right? Like we've seen that test run house like 4,500 players, and that's the other side of adoption, right? So that people are working on, and I'm kind of curious, where do you see the long game? What is the long game, and how the guilds positioning themselves for it? Howard, I'll pick on you for this.
Sure. So if we go back to sort of the principles or principle thinking on this, right? The big picture for the next 5 years is the most important in my mind, which is, I think, blockchain industry is going to grow 10 to 100 times in the next 5 years. And crypto gaming is going to be one of the biggest catalysts for that. And crypto gaming is going to grow, say, anywhere from 10 times to 20 times to 100 times as well in the next 5 years. The biggest thing that we're trying to work on is to make that process as easy as possible and create product to provide value for the users. For us, the users are both the games and also the game players. Create products that creates value for these people, whether it's, and mainly focus on helping them to adapt the products or get understanding about the product more easily throughout this entire time. We did that with the guild model, with providing a free NFT for people to use to play for earning, right? We're doing that with our research center for providing a lot of education, and we're building a software for GameFi identity product that helps users to hang out, create a social space, and for them to discuss and discover better games along all that. But coming back, right, we're trying to contribute as much as possible for the industry to grow quickly and acquire more user. And if the entire sort of North Star for blockchain industry is to acquire more users in the next 5 years, and we see that's something that I can predict with very high confidence, which is the blockchain industry is going to grow 10 to 100 times in the next 5 years. And the North Star for us is also to grow users and onboard more new users from non-crypto users, and then educate them about blockchain, so that it's very aligned with the entire industry.
Anybody want to jump in before we jump to the next topic?
No, real quick. I know we're going to run short on time, but I definitely want to back Howard up. I mean, I think the key phrase we've been hearing in a lot of these questions is education, and I can't agree with Howard more. I think bringing Web2 players in, giving them a home or an ecosystem of education, and teaching them about these processes, which I've touched upon in another question, is ultra important, right? When we think like long-term vision, I think there's also when you bring economics into these games, like it's really hard to avoid talking about econ here. Is you look at the earnings ratios of the scholar, you look at the earnings ratios of the guild, and then you also look at more generalized macro volatility in the spot market, right? Even though gaming, they say, is quote unquote recession proof, right? I mean, there's still live tokens in there that if there are general geopolitical issues, or obviously there's a horrible economy going on here in the United States and North America, I mean, it's going to affect the markets as a whole, and it does put sell pressure on this. So I think constant adjustment to these economies, and not just coming into a game very, very short-term scenarios of 3 to 6 months and saying, hey, the token's in trouble, or there's been a lot of sell pressure lately. I think it's also up to guilds to really step in. At least this is what we do on our side as well. In particular, me, is we'll work with the founders and work on their core game loops, work on having to make economic adjustments, giving them insights, because a lot of the games that we've seen, even of super high quality coming from Web2, even some that are unannounced just yet, aren't exactly even perfectly knowledgeable completely on Web3 or have a ton of Web3 experience themselves. They need help. And it's not just the scholars and the player base that needs education, but it could also go all the way up to the founders and the game studios as well. And providing that guidance to be able to make these adjustments, creating extra token syncs, working on their token econ, on top of all the player acquisition there is just so crucial. And I think you'll see the best skills out there rise to the top by offering the support and sharing this knowledge and education back to the people that can actually implement it into the design.
Awesome. Thank you both for that answer. If anybody in the audience has a question, now is kind of a good time to just kind of raise your hand. We'll call you up. We'll get to introduce yourself and ask a question. In the meantime, I wanted to kind of follow up on something that kind of been mentioned tangentially a number of times throughout the conversation: tools, right? And that guilds are starting to kind of develop tools. There's a number of things that as gamers we know is required from kind of analytics for managers. It's kind of how do you manage your scholars. There's a number of tools that are kind of here and there, but they're what do you see as important that needs to be built, that's being built, and what role do guilds play in kind of both the development and the aggregation of those resources?
Oh, I think for me, since we're focused on esports, right? I think API would be best. Like, if you want to create tournaments and all that, or grassroots tournaments for their games, and then maybe API that will help out in terms of broadcasting will be great. Like providing those backend information like HP, because sometimes, let's say in their game itself, in the user interface, it doesn't show how many HP or how many damage a particular champion has dealt up against another character. So I guess those kind of things, but that's just for specifically for, I think, for competitive. But other than that, maybe some, because players love having leaderboards, maybe those kind of things wherein it will help let's say decision makers coming from esports teams or guilds conducting tryouts, or something that will allow them to like review what this particular player have been doing in terms of his competitiveness in the game that he's playing or trying out to or applying for. So I think those kind of things will help out if you want to like amplify the emergence of esports in Web3.
I think just probably a contrarian answer to this one with tools in guilds and asset management. I think from a Web3 perspective, if infra is king, still I think very fundamentally distribution is King Kong, right? So it doesn't matter how many tools come up. I think the wider problem is centered around education, adoption, and engagement, and the very premise of P2E, which is democratizing that opportunity of just opportunities and wealth creation to the masses. And hence, I think I'll let probably Jeff and Howard talk about tools for guilds. But honestly, I think the more fundamental issues that need to be addressed in this space will revolve around adoption and how do you sort of bring more people into this space before providing all these tools. Which, for instance, I mean, even in the traditional esports world, users and content creators have been sort of given tools for streaming and all of the other aspects like analysis and statistics. All of it have come more recently, and that industry is probably like 15, 20 years old. So I think we're very early in the Web3 gaming era, and hence I think adoption and education far supersede tools.
Well, I think another interesting thing is like, we can talk about metrics about scholar performance, game performance, etc. But I think like there's more fundamentals that also can be discussed, like participation, right? I think is a key word, like social participation, guild participation. Not everybody inside a guild, and maybe Howard or Kasai can back me up, from their end, but not everybody is a gamer, believe it or not. There are content creators out there, there are marketers out there, there are just people that just love to be in gaming communities and learn more. So there's a lot of ways that you can measure even community metrics in involvement, right? Especially when you have tokens surrounding all of these environments. So I think I know we could talk to death about the technicals and metrics and how important they are. And yes, they are. But I think, touching upon the fundamentals is not something, I hear a lot too much. And I think participation is the key word there.
I totally agree with Jeff there. I think it's awesome that he mentioned the content creation and the participation. Even in Web2 gaming, there are a lot of content creator or viewers that are not necessarily spending all their time playing the game. They spend a lot more time watching other people play or watching esports competition or reading about games or reading about. There are also like investors in play, right, in Web3 gaming too. So I totally agree with Jeff there. And with what we are trying to build as well, we're building that social, like online social space for gamers to hang out with each other, and also the GameFi research portal that we have, which is the first research portal that focuses on GameFi that's institutional grade. That is content that we want people to benefit from. It's all free for everyone. It's on ancient8.gg on our website, and that content is for people to not only educate themselves about GameFi, but also hopefully will help people find some alpha with discovering games to play or discovering games to invest in, even though it's not investment advice. The whole premise there is we also want to encourage more KOLs and other smart people with insights in the GameFi space to publish content on that platform as we continue to develop that platform and provide more high quality content and basically a space for gamers to hang out and do social and meet other people who are interested in GameFi. So totally agree with Jeff there.
Oh, awesome. But just a reminder, if anybody in the audience does have a question, please raise your hand. We'll call you up. You can ask a question. In the meantime, I want to follow up on something Jeff said regarding engagement. So, how do you stimulate and motivate engagement, especially where it can have so many outlets? Personally, really interested in the evolution of UGC, but there's a number of different things that been mentioned in the conversation. How do you stimulate that, and also how do you track if your efforts are successful?
Well, I think go ahead, Kasai. Go ahead.
Very quick. So I think for engagement, it's really more in building that real relationship with your community, right? Not just a matter of, okay, we're building numbers in our guild and that's it. So many of the guild members, I think, coming from the sentiments of guild members themselves or the players themselves, they would prefer to actually communicate and be in that relationship with founders, with the guild leaders, and not just like some maybe random person who got hired. So like just really building that relationship, and I think that empowers, or that at least that makes the community members feel like they are also important, they are part of the community. And how you like amplify that is even more through actually joining the community events that you build for them. And at least for me, that's how it's working out to in terms of engaging my own community as Kaisai, as an influencer, and in One Snap Esports as well.
You want to piggyback off that too, right? As you develop relationships with inside the community, if you start working on UGC or marketing or content as a whole, like inside the guild, yes, you can be able to track that obviously with certain performance, certain items that are provided, right? If there's certain content that is made as an example. But I also think even on the game layer, right? I think that's a pretty exciting opportunity for studios, whether to start incorporating tokens or start incorporating some kind of even low-level NFTs or even high-level NFTs, depending on what you want to be done, right? I think the really key phrase here is, make it fun, make it, entertaining, right? That these people aren't just creating content or doing these quote-unquote tasks for some type of menial reward or some type of NFT. It should be really the opposite. The inverse is rewarding them for things that they actually want to do that's beneficial to both the guild and the player base inside the game, as well. So yeah, I mean, I think how to track that is specifically is yet to be seen, because again, that's more of like a fundamental thing, like not necessarily like a performance-based metric of your gameplay. But I think that's an exciting thing. And to back up what Kasaya said, like, being able to develop and get closer with your community and have those relationships with inside your community is a really great start to that.
I'm curious on that also in the context of kind of, we know that a lot of the top games, they have, longer development cycles than Web3 is typically got kind of acquainted with like DeFi projects, right? A really kind of in-depth kind of Web3 game, will still take, 2 to 4 years to fully kind of develop and grow. And that requires a whole lot of patience from the community, right? So, how do you see games, and where do you see guilds kind of engaging with the community to help kind of sustain kind of the interest, but at the same time to not overdo it so that there's disappointment when kind of the waiting kind of goes into months and years, right? We know guilds kind of have engaged with teams kind of pre-launch. So how do you kind of maintain kind of those community relationships?
Well, I think there's two ways, just to jump in real quickly on that, like both the guild side and the game side, right? When we talk to a lot of game developers and studios and we ask them, do you have Discord and Twitter up and running? We think this is an opportunity for storytelling. One thing that's different about the Web3 side of things is you have direct access to, the founders or the team. You've seen a lot of even community members that are interested in a game, become community managers, for instance. And I think, having the option for storytelling and show your designs, ask your community for feedback, show, put out ideas into the community, and, just gauge or get a temperature check of what they like about something is really about just constantly being interactive with your community and the players. Yes, like I think what we've seen even the Web2 side, all of a sudden the game would be in development for 2 years, there's anticipation for it, and then it just drops, right? Obviously, there's huge marketing campaigns around it, but this is an opportunity for the Web3 side to get a little bit more intimate with their community and just go through the storytelling process, go through these updates, give your backgrounds, talk to them, and develop these players into, again, I'm going to use that phrase, sticky assets, right? Where they hang tight and are very interested. And it feels like a community. It feels like a family. It feels like a better environment than you're just a number to FIFA or just a number to, Fortnite, for instance, right? And I'm not saying, players are just numbers to those entities. I'm just using an example because they're gigantic. But, and then I think, on the guild side is also the same scenario as well. When we talked about like sub DAOs or even sub guilds, right? Whatever phrase you'd wish to use inside that, is you are developing these micro communities that have a heavy interest in this either genre of game, this type of game, this specific gameplay or whatnot. And it's really, really just absolutely crucial to have very strong communication skills in this to keep it engaging, right? Keep that storytelling going, get ideas, and then link that back inside the gaming community as well, right? So, and then of course, I'm talking about this sub DAO or sub guild community linking over to the game community as well. But I think that's a really important way. And unfortunately, it's been like a pretty big missed opportunity from a lot of people to really engage in that storytelling process to get the community excited, because there's been a lot of use of DeFi yields, degenerate yields, NFT giveaways, and whitelisting. There's just been some very menial and poor structured Web3 marketing campaigns that have really backfired on a lot of games rather than just keeping it organic, having a slower pace but stronger pace, right? And um, you know, fast money doesn't last long, right? I guess essentially is the summary here. And having, going through all these like poor marketing campaigns while not having that relationship with your community is going to just really force people to be ROI focused or flippers, to attract flippers into your community for the NFTs, and then just come in and exit very quickly, versus building that story, building that community really creates that sturdy foundation from the player base. And then guilds can create those micro, communities inside their own community as well to support that. So I think that's a really good direction of, where I see guilds going. I mean, I know that's what we've been doing and really trying to build up that process to be even stronger.
Abhinandan, I see you raise your hand.
Yeah, just picking off from where Jeff left off. I think one of the reasons we exist and what we are building towards is building that sort of constant engagement and continued engagement through competition, esports technically, and also the way we are organizing our distribution and our user base is high school by high school and college by college, sort of moving away from just sort of the gameplay and game mechanism to also building those micro communities and affinities, which will go far beyond just looking at the economic incentive of these games, or just sort of trying to see the economic models that drive how you can earn playing these games. So that's one of the ways that we obviously are going with the premise and hypothesis that by building these multiple micro guilds, sub guilds or sub DAOs as Jeff refers them to, we'll be able to sort of create that kind of long-term rivalry. Because at the end of the day, once you have these gaming guilds in these schools and colleges, they're going to exist forever. People can graduate out of these institutions, and you'll still have new users coming in, and new scholars to probably engage with. And essentially, what we want to become is kind of a feeder system to the larger guilds like a YGG and an Ancient Eight, and that's the reason for our existence. And we believe that we will create that kind of continued engagement, which is annual in nature and not like one time or just weekly or monthly. And hopefully that aids new game publishers and game developers who are launching projects.
Awesome. And that takes us to the top of the hour. Thank you everybody so much for your thoughts. Thank you speakers for kind of this awesome conversation. Thank you everybody who tuned in. As mentioned, this is a weekly conversation. So we're going to be back next week, and we'll be starting kind of a whole series where we'll be talking about the different blockchain ecosystems for gaming that there are. Next week, it'll be a little bit of a spoiler alert. I think we'll be talking about Polygon and their gaming ecosystem. So tune in. And once again, speakers, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts.
Thanks for having us. Thanks, guys. And thanks for the rest of the speakers as well.
Thank you, One Snap people. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Leo. Thanks, everyone.